Good evening, all. Welcome to Real Triad Reviews. We are back after a 1 week hiatus. All my fault. We'll deal with that later. We're here to review the final week of the Great Tony Debate. Is Tony Stark a hero or not? We'll be reviewing 3 films and a TV show, so we're going to have to get through some of this a little fast. So I think Homecoming will be a quick little, and we'll get through it. How are my co-hosts tonight? How you doing, Black Girl Marvel?
Okay, could be a little bit better if I was lined up a little bit more in the camera, but we'll see how that goes. Try to
Okay,
fix
fair
it,
enough.
but
And how are you
cameras.
doing, Marvelite?
But I'm good.
Doing great, doing great. I'm glad to be on. Glad to have us back.
Agreed, agreed. And again, I'm having some issues, and we'll be getting that taken care of so that I can go back to being, a full time dad and a full time streamer and all that fun stuff. That being said, let's get right into it. We've got 3 movies that we're going to be reviewing tonight, and the first movie that we're going to review tonight is going to be Spider-Man: Homecoming. We're also going to review Avengers: Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame, and then we're going to also touch on Loki, which started this week, and of course we're going to get 5 more wonderful weeks of that. So I'm really excited. You guys watched it. What's your initial impression?
Lady,
Amazing.
I agree. I had a great time.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a TVA. I think it was a TVA origin story, and it didn't like reintroduce us to Loki.
I agree. I agree.
So I liked it because this isn't our Loki essentially. So it's like they gave us like reintroduction. So I like that.
I agree. We'll get into Loki a little bit more a little later. I do want to finish the debate that we've had. Welcome, Lady Crossheart, Commander Crossheart, to the chat. Thank you for coming by and supporting us. You are always an awesome community builder, and we love you. Um, and she watched it, so that's awesome. So now we're all on the same page. I'm pretty sure everybody caught this. I'm almost certain
Yeah.
this was like a universal thing, or at least mostly universal. Um, Getting into Spider-Man and Endgame and all that. There's not a lot of development in Spider-Man for Tony, and we can just give our thoughts and a quick review on that because I would like to spend time on the other 2 films and the show, which I think we're all really excited to talk about. So why don't you give me just a quick rundown of what you think of Spider-Man: Homecoming, how you think it affects this discussion we're having, and then your rating, and just do that all in one go. And who would like to maybe try that first?
Or I'm sorry. Can you say that again? What you want us to do? Because I'm like lost.
It's okay. It's okay. I could even start first as well, but I want to do just an overall impression of the film Homecoming, how you think it might apply to this argument about Tony Stark, and then your rating all in one go.
Oh, okay, I can do that. I can go first.
Sweet, go for it.
Just get this out of the way.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so for me, I was excited to see Homecoming simply because it was our first official full length look at this Spider-Man. Tom Holland Spider-Man. So I was excited to see that. I love that Tony Stark was not in it a lot because it's not his movie. I understand that he's the Uncle Ben of this Earth for Spider-Man, but I was just happy that he had like moments where he popped in, popped out, and I felt like they were good moments to be in and out. I feel like he did progress a little bit because it's not fully about him. You don't see a lot, but he's trying as best he can to make sure that Peter doesn't turn into him. So he's very self-aware that he has some like idiosyncrasies or some rough edges that he does not wish Peter to bring into being a superhero. So I feel like that's very enlightening of Tony to be that self-aware of himself, to want somebody to be different than him, to be better than him. And the times that we do see him, of course, he's the comedic relief throughout it, but he also has some genuine moments where when he pops out of the armor, when Spider-Man literally needs him the most, he gives him like the talking to and like the parent or superhero parent talk that he needs. So overall for this film, I would give Spider-Man Homecoming, I give it a solid 8.5 because I love me some Michael Keaton. Okay. Michael Keaton anything, and I'll just be like, "It's amazing!" Like it doesn't, because I think I think he's an amazing actor, and I think he brings a lot of like gravitas and like realness to his roles, no matter what he plays. And I feel like if Michael Keaton wasn't in this film, it wouldn't have been as elevated as it was. And that's just my opinion. And I guess my 12-year-old self will probably give this a 10 because young Spider-Man, cute Tom Holland flying in the air. He likes a black girl. I'm all for it. You know, like my 12-year-old self would have lost her mind. So yeah.
That is fair across the board. All right, so we got an 8.5 and a 10 for the child review, if you will. I don't know what we're going to call that, but our, I don't know, kid self. I don't know, something to that effect. Marvelite, what do you got? Let's hear your take.
So I love Tom Holland as Peter Parker as Spider-Man. I honestly do not feel like this was the strongest Spider-Man film. I think this was a great Peter Parker film. I mean, even in the suit, he's Peter Parker throughout the whole thing. And I know a lot of people like do the comparisons. They think that Tobey Maguire was the better Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield was the better Spider-Man, and then Tom Holland's a good mix between the two. But we really do get to see the kind of the awkward teenish thing with Peter. He's making stupid decisions. He's not understanding that things are more involved. There's lots of Easter eggs throughout the with damage control and with the fact that we get Prowler, we get the reference to Miles Morales without saying his name, which if you go back to the deleted scenes in Spider-Man Homecoming, there's actually the scene that follows where you see Miles' uncle still attached to the trunk of the car, and he calls Miles and says, "Hey, Miles, I'm not going to be there. I'm kind of stuck in a situation." And so you get a lot of cool things. You get the reference to, I mean, it really at this point in this movie, it's more world building. You've got Adrian Toomes, you've got Scorpion, you've got Tinkerer, you've got Shocker. You've got all of this stuff that's kind of building up to something bigger, but we really don't see Spider-Man until his suit is taken away from him and he goes back to his handmade suit and he has to rely on his own wits and not Stark Tech. And I think that was the part where I got really excited in the film. Like, I liked Vulture. I think they handled it really well. You can't have an old guy in a bird suit, flying around, flapping around the city. I think the idea of using Chitauri system, yo, Joker, what's up? Using Chitauri, weaponry and technology, and all of this stuff to make weapons that are in the real world. I think that makes the MCU world more comic booky when you start seeing, them stealing from damage control, and then that technology goes out and makes supervillains at that point. The Tony Stark thing, I feel like they just put him in there to keep it going. I don't think he was a really good role model in this film. If anything, the only progression and there is more for his own development, because he comes to the realization when he's about to take the suit away from Peter that he's basically like he's doing what his dad would have done to him. And it's one of those steps where you saw in Civil War, he made Barf so that he had Barf develop so that he could do his own personal therapy sessions, because obviously in Iron Man 3 sitting down with Banner didn't work.
Not
and
at
then
all.
and then in this one you find him kind of letting his hands off of Peter because he was sick of his dad getting involved in his life, but ended up seeing that he needed to be hard with Peter when things got really bad, to the point of where you just kind of see he's having to come to terms with himself, more than, and I think it was good that he took the suit away, because Peter had to rely on himself. And I think this is what a lot of people had a problem with the storyline of Peter Parker in the MCU, because until you start realizing he's developing the web fluid in the drawer of his laboratory, or that he had like a suit hidden in the school under a locker, that you have those little references of what he did, you just think that everything was handed to him at that point. And so I think it was important to get him away from Stark Tech at the end of the film, and I think it was worth it, because then he was more valued as Spider-Man in it. So ultimately, I like the film. I had a problem with the adults in it, because it's like don't give this kid technology and then give him no guidance. Like the fact that Happy was like not responding to any of his emails and not even listening to him, it's like, it's like typical, you know, adults. And if you are parents in this thing, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter how far off your kid talks. Some of the conversations my kid has had this week has been, you just don't even know where it comes from. But you listen
Mhm.
and you listen, because oftentimes the reason why youth do not value adults' opinions is because adults don't listen. And I think that's a big thing. Peter went off and did what he had to do because none of the adults would listen to him. And then when they said they listened to him, it's after they're punishing him because he was doing what he thought was right. So
Agreed.
overall, the movie, I think it was a solid 7 for me. It's definitely rewatchable. I'll watch it a lot. I think the Adrian Toomes, like the plot twist was the best that they have done in the MCU. I actually came into that very pure, and so I was pleasantly surprised when that happened. I think it was a lot better than the Mandarin twist.
Mm.
By me, hands down. And so as a let's say as a 12-year-old, I'd give this a solid 10, because let's face it, at 12 years old, I was begging for a Spider-Man movie. So
That's fair.
Right.
I think I'm a little more jaded as an adult, because I think I can pick certain things from all of the Spider-Man films, all the trilogies that we're having right at this point. And right now, the Raimi's trilogy is still my favorite, up until you get to the third movie. So, because I mean, Spider-Man 2 is with Tobey Maguire is by far my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time.
Hmm.
I mean, just Doc Ock, even though they messed him up, I still love it. And I'm so glad that Molina's coming back for the second one, or for the third home series. So yeah, that's it.
All right. No, I like it. And I like that you guys both had that summed up very nicely. There are definitely notes that I'm going to take from both of your reviews, if you will. And one of the ones that stuck out that Tony just mentioned was the way that they treated Peter as this kid who should just know better. And it's like, okay, so he was a nerd. He did well in school. They knew that. He was picked because Tony had spied on him somehow and figured out he was Spider-Man. Probably happenstance. And then went out of his way to use this kid, like we had talked about in Civil War. He used this kid, brought him along illegally without parental guidance or permission. Again, talking about Tony. And then when he's done, after he's gone through this really bad event, he's basically had PTSD from fighting his, one of his new best friends over his old best friend. He just dumps the kid off with a suit and says, "Do nothing." And I was 15 once, and I didn't do nothing without a suit. So, you give me a suit at 15 and I'm going to kind of go nuts. So I understand why Peter did what he did. He was like, oh, they told me I'm a superhero. They even kind of made me an Avenger. Let me do what I'm supposed to do. And Tony was like, nah, you got your fun. You took Cap's shield away. Now go back to being a kid. And you can't do that. You can't expect anyone to do that. That's not really fair.
Exactly.
So that being said, I did think it was nice to see Tony reflecting on his own father, especially leading into Endgame, where we get to really see him reflect on that. So that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that they used Iron Man as a ploy to get people to buy Spider-Man tickets, which was really weird because it was the other way around for my whole life. They would have sold Spider-Man in order to get you to come see Iron Man my whole life. Now it's the other way around. And of course, that's the Robert Downey Jr. effect, if you will. What is Joker saying here? I'm run down, to be honest. There's a lot going on, and I'm doing 40 things at the same time every day. And I understand that, sir. So take it easy. Yep. Just sit back, relax, and let the real Triad reviewers give you some entertainment. That's what Sunday nights are for, I think. So that's what I try to do, is just let my brain melt and enjoy some Marvel, at least tonight. That being said, I think this is a solid Spider-Man movie once he becomes Spider-Man, and I mean literally even after his suit gets taken away. And this was something that I thought was interesting, because there's always the trope that they have to take the powers away from the character, and that's fine. It's the second step in the origin story. Like, you do an origin, and then they have to lose their powers to earn them, right? So I knew that was going to happen. It's inevitable. It's how they approach it, and this was my favorite approach to that, because they made it authentic. He didn't lose his powers, because as much as I love Spider-Man 2 and Molina and everything that Tony just said. I
Yeah.
didn't like how he lost his powers, where he was like, I doubt myself, so now my fingers don't grip to the wall. It really kind of bothered me. I didn't, it disconnected for me. So having his suit be where a lot of his power that he thinks comes from, and realizing that no, it's his character, was also like a reflection of the argument we've been having for the last month about Tony Stark and this idea that is the suit and what the suit gives you the hero, or is it the person inside, right? And that's a big part of this discussion. They are awesome co-hosts, 100,000%. They're understandable humans, and they have been really understanding with my situation, and they both deserve so much kudos. All
it's
of
the first
these
time
things
I've been called a human. Thank you so much.
ever. What have you been called before that?
I can't repeat on the stream.
Oh, that's well. Can you do a PG-13 version? We try. We do try. We appreciate it. We want more people to know that we're here, but we'll get there eventually. Maybe once my neck surgery happens, we'll get there. But
I don't claim to be human. So
you don't claim to be human? Okay,
well,
then
honestly, at this point, after watching Loki, I'm not even sure if I'm a robot or not.
that scene.
Exactly.
Oh, I had to question myself, and I felt him. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay,
we'll get to it.
yeah, this is me in that moment. Getting to it's not official, but it's likely. It's really really likely. We'll see though. This isn't the time for that. No, we're talking Spider-Man right now. So the suit looks good. I love the eye movement. They took that from Deadpool. I think that they should do the same thing with Batman. I know that's totally aside, but that would be a great Batman, because he always had the black dirt or whiteout eyes in the cartoons, and I always thought that looked great. So I love the suit. I love the little doohickey that comes out of his chest. I love the end scene. I mean, you guys covered most of the notes, so I'm trying to cover stuff you guys haven't touched. The end scene where they're going to give Peter, a chance at being an Avenger. They're going to give him the Iron Spider suit. They're ready to go. I think that shows that the entire thing that Tony and I already kind of covered about Happy and Tony being completely irresponsible about this whole thing is that they were winging it the whole time. And they were like, well, this kid, he took down the Vulture, so let's give him a spot. I'm like, you still didn't learn anything from what the kid, like, you aren't a dad, but you're trying to act like this father figure, this foster father to a kid that you just basically plucked out of New York because he had spider powers. I don't know. I get a little disconnected there. The movie's fun. I do have a blast with it. I love the change for a much more Gen Z approach, because these are not our movies as much as we're going to lay claim to them. They're not targeted at us anymore. As much as I love them, I respect that this is, the jokes might go over my head soon, because it'll be some, Gen Z joke that I'm like, okay, I'll have to look it up, and then find out that I'm still kind of an old nerd. I will give it a 9, and it's mostly because I think the dynamic between all the characters works. I believe everything that's happening. They keep it grounded enough, but there's enough tech in it that it works. And Vulture might be the best bad guy they've had besides Thanos in the MCU. And I don't count Loki because he skirts the line. So I love Vulture. I can't wait to see more of him. I hope they do a full-blown Sinister Six, and I hope they bring Keaton back for it. He will be amazing. He's one of my favorite superhero actors, if you will, maybe even outside of that. Kid Me 10, no doubt. Like, everybody loves a Spider-Man movie.
So something you just mentioned that kind of made me think about it. There's kind of a good balance with the villains in the MCU. Some of them are rather relatable when you think of like the Vulture, or what his purpose for doing what he's doing. In a twisted sense, you can get an idea of why Thanos is doing it, but I think we're going to find out more of Thanos's reasoning with the Eternals. But you've really only got a few like really bad guys. Like you've got Ironmonger,
Obadiah.
you've got Obadiah Stane, you've got Red Skull, who obviously is an idealistic, monster.
Right.
And Malekith, who, that's just in his nature. That is how he was. But even Loki was the big bad. And when we get into the show, you kind of get an idea, there's a lot deeper to him, but in 2012, we didn't know that. So
Right. So
I would just like to add in. I would just like real quick. I would like to add in.
Sure.
For Homecoming is that like it's for me. It's one of those things where it's like even a parent that chooses to be a parent doesn't know how to be a parent, right? So somebody that sees like you could see something in somebody and still have a difficulty on how to guide them the best way you can because you weren't guided as great as you were. Like I don't think nobody should really expect Tony to be like a great father when he barely had his life for for the formative years
okay,
that he
so
would probably need
I,
his parents to have in his life.
I'm so glad you brought this up,
Um,
Lala, personally, because
oh yeah,
yeah, I have to say this because you brought up a moment that I was going to bring up later, but I figured now's the time because you literally brought it up. So the last two films in this series hit me very personally because of my father's passing and the way he passed and the words that were spoken when he passed are very similar to that of Tony and all that. Not that my dad had Infinity Stones and all that stuff, but he still
well,
passed in
you
a
don't
similar
know.
way. Well, I don't because he did tell me I was
Yeah,
quarter alien, but I don't know what that means. Um,
yeah,
so it hits me personally. So this whole trope of this found father or father that wasn't there, this lost father is a better way to put it, because Tony's story is a lost father, so he had no way to guide himself, had to learn how to guide himself. He expected
right.
more. He expected more from Peter Parker. Well, Tony in this instance is kind of like my dad, and I'm Peter Parker. I know that's weird, but that's how my brain connects to this
No, it's
story.
not weird. Right.
And so whenever I watch Endgame, I'm a wreck because my dad died 1 year before Endgame came out. And so I watched it with that fresh on the mind, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
this was a hard section of this argument to be had. This is the hardest moment for me because we're starting to get into moments where I'm starting to question, was my dad a hero and things like that. So anyway, I just had to let you know that that's where we're treading. So if I get weird,
Okay.
it's because
You're
of that.
fine.
Okay.
You're
And
fine.
I'm gonna, I
Um,
promise.
no, you're fine. Yeah, you're good. It's okay. This is what we're here for, man. Like it's we're kind of like therapy as well as a good talk.
I like
You know what
that.
I mean? So it's all good. But for me, like I like stories, and this is probably why I like the MCU so much, because I like stories where it's not all about them being in a suit and blow uppy things and flipping and flying. Because like the whole point of Peter Parker is even without a suit, he's still Spider-Man. The suit does not make him Spider-Man. Like the suit makes Iron Man for the most part. You know what I mean? Like he's still Tony Stark. He's still like a billionaire. He's an inventor, but like the basis of like Peter's powers are within him, right? And so a suit shouldn't define you. And I think that was the whole point of the movie. Like this suit shouldn't define you. Like if that's the case, then give me the suit.
Right.
Grow up some more,
Right.
and then we'll get you another suit. And so I I mean I've never seen Happy as like a parent for the most part. So
No.
I think him treating Peter that way is just hilarious to me because he's like the uncle that doesn't really care about you, or he does, just not right now. You know what I mean? Like he's like that uncle.
He knows you're throwing a
He,
kegger, but he's not saying nothing.
he's not saying nothing because he really doesn't care. He's like, I don't care. Like
He's
if
like,
they find out, they find out.
he's like,
Like
you can throw the kegger, but if there's a scratch on anything, it's all on
right,
you.
or
It's
anything
all
that
on you, man.
I'm
Right.
supposed to protect is
Right.
like it's all on you. You know what I
So
mean?
if there's
well,
any,
I think also,
liquor in the pool,
yeah, I think also really happy when he's approaching this. He feels like this is a punishment from Tony, and he's thinking that
Mm-hmm.
he's guarding, Peter, or keeping track of him because he's done something wrong, or maybe it's because of an aftermath of Iron Man 3 or whatever. But really, Tony was expecting him to be more of a mentor or a father figure, and I think what happens is there had to be that realization that would lead to kind of their relationship going into Far From Home. So I think
Yeah,
that's why
Yeah.
you have the
and that
more
came.
fatherly Happy at that point.
Let's not forget about
Yeah, because
Morgan and the fact that he probably helps raise her a bit after the fact as well,
Yep.
before Far From Home.
yeah, and so like because like you see that come to a head in Far From Home because it strengthens their relationship. Like Peter's and Happy's relationship in Far From Home is leaps and bounds what it was in like Homecoming. So like it's a nice trajectory going forward. but also I feel like I kind of agree with you, Sanity. I kind of agree with you in the fact that like Tony, you're a little naive to think that this 15-year-old kid is not going to go back to doing what he was doing before you found him or before you decided to, because you have footage of him doing these
Right.
things without being involved. And he was in this makeshift sweatsuit that he made himself, like, and now he has a suit that has better tech that he wants to learn. You really think if you tell him like sit down, nobody cares that you're Tony Stark for the most part. Like, that's fine, dude. I'm still gonna go.
He gave him
do
a race car. He gave him a full blown like street racer, and then nerfed it with a governor and said, "Drive it like a Volvo." Literally, this is
But
what
here's
he
the thing:
did.
I get why Tony would do that, but also I'm like, but also I think Tony even knew that because he had Happy in his back pocket for him. You know what I mean? So like,
I agree.
I think to a certain degree, Tony was like, "Hey man, don't do this, please don't do it. Like, you know, like just chill out for a minute. We're trying to work some stuff out on this end." But I think he also knew like this is a 15-year-old kid. Like,
right.
He was excited to be with the Avengers. He grew up with the Avengers. Like, Happy, go watch him.
If this were a character that was just strong, not smart, I wouldn't have cared that he gave him the suit, because the character would have followed through with all the steps to get to where they would have earned the training wheels to be removed. But he gave it to a kid he knew was a genius and an engineer, and expected him not to take the training wheels off. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, he gave a kid a car that had all the power, and then acted like when he knew how to be a mechanic and took the governor off, that he was shocked. Like, I don't know. That's just me.
But I don't think he was shocked. I don't think he was so much shocked. I think he was shocked at like how big of a mess he got into. I think Tony still expected him to get into messes because he knew when to show up when things was going bad on that ferry. He knew when because Happy's been keeping track of him. So like, I still feel like Tony was like, "All right, man, just show me you're a little responsible because like we got plans for you. Like, show me that you like you got something." But he also knew that like it's a 15-year-old kid. Like, Tony, what were you doing at 15? And you had all this money, this power, and now you've given that in the form of a suit to a kid.
Right.
Like, he knew it would happen, but I think it was like he was kind of like flipping the die just to see like, is he gonna do it? Okay, just watch it just in case. You know?
But if you also think about it, like, he didn't know that the suit had more than just it being a nice techie suit until Tony had to save him the first time. When the parachute deployed, that surprised him. But then when Tony activated the heater in the suit, then he's like, okay, what else? He had the idea. What else can this suit do?
It has more bells and whistles than he thought. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have known about the training wheels protocol unless Tony wouldn't have told him about the tracker. Because as soon as he took the tracker off, that's when Ned said, you know, there's something in here called the training wheels protocol.
Right.
He's like, get rid of it.
Right.
So.
And I forgot Ned, the guy in the chair. He deserves a lot of the credit for that hack into that suit. He deserves a lot of this.
Yes.
A lot of that.
You always gotta have a guy in a chair. Yeah.
Yeah. No, my favorite guy in the chair. Right. My favorite guy in the chair is Barbara Gordon as Oracle. That's my favorite guy in the chair.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, although having her back as Batgirl is great too. So, anyway, moving on. So there's definitely some things here that stem into our argument, and we're going to step into Infinity War, which again might be a movie that, there's plenty of things that he does in this film that I think should be explored. And it's a complex film, but we only have a half an hour, and I don't want to lose any notes, but we are, this still surrounds an argument about Tony Stark, so let's do our best. And I do definitely want to talk about Loki, because I actually think it's relevant to these two films. So, it is relevant to these two films. So Infinity War. Tony, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Okay. All right. So Infinity War. I'll just go ahead. So basically, I'm not going to talk about anything that has to do with the opening scene. I'm not going to really get into what it entails for the Loki show, because we can go back and talk about that at that point. But like, let's talk from a Tony standpoint. We see Tony immediately. The first thing we find him, he's running through the park in New York with Pepper. They are talking, and I think this is where we see of the engagement that he had with Peter Parker, even from Homecoming into, let's say, whatever happened in between, which involves, I think Tony's got more of an idea of settling down and establishing a life, but he's not really willing to let go of Iron Man. And I think that the reason for that is because I don't think he feels like everything's safe. We've seen him, go off the extremes with Age of Ultron. We've seen him make some poor decisions in Civil War. And I think he realizes that at this point, with the Sokovia Accords and everything else going on, um, there's not going to be any time for rest for him. He's hoping for the future, which is why he has the idea of his wife of Pepper, having a child, of which I was glad that they resolved the Pepper issue. That was one of the things I had a problem with in Civil War, because they kind of just they glazed over that. It was like a little bit of a conversation point, and then Homecoming, I think they got enough backlash that in Homecoming, that's when they fixed it at the end. But we have this idea that he says the casing for the nanotechnology is more of like a just in case, like an insurance policy, just in case there's something in the closet. And I think that's the thing. I think Tony is aware that it's not so much of the aliens outside that he's worried about, but he also needs to make sure he protects from the things that he's done in his past that could come back to haunt him. I think he's at this point he's realized Obadiah Stane is part of his problem, or what was a problem in his making. Aldrich Killian was a problem in his making. Adrian Toombs was a problem in his making, because all of them were directly affected by Tony in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this encountering with magic, which was hard for him. Yo, Psycho Punk, what's up?
Hey,
And
hey.
and we have this change where he's being told there's a bigger world. Bruce comes back. He finally, if you notice, like at that scene when he's in the Sanctum Sanctorum, when he is finally told the name Thanos, there was like a light that went off on him, because at that point he was able to pinpoint what his fear has been this whole time. And I think at that point it was more of a I know what my target is, and you could see Tony was more focused.
Right.
And then of course you have his banter. I have a love-hate relationship with the children of Thanos. You could tell where they invested more in development, and I feel like what's his name? Oh, I'm forgetting the one that ends up taking Doctor Strange. I completely forgot his name right now.
The Maw.
Yeah. I think they used to call yeah. So his power set in the comics books was of like he had the ability, he was like a silver tongue. He could convince people to give and do what he wanted. And so to give him like the telekinesis powers kind of bothered me a little bit. Because I thought they could have done a whole lot more, because he could have turned Doctor Strange against them, but for the sake of storylines, you see how the Avengers have fractured. You've got, basically Team Cap that's coming out. You've got Team Iron Man that's going to Titan. And it bothered me. They never really quantified whether or not the Titan was Titan Moon. They just, sent them all the way out in the galaxy. And you've got this build up, and it really was a story. It's not so much an Avengers story; it's a Thanos story. This was like Thanos' quest. This was him going to retrieve all of the stones, and at a point where his journey actually brings them all, together to fight him. And the problem is, because the Avengers were fractured, they weren't able to take him on. And there's a lot to unpack within the storyline. But I think what's interesting with Tony is Tony, at this point he stops and listens to Peter Parker in the ship. He's willing to take some like suggestions from him, but at the same time, he even stops him from talking and says, the adults are talking now. He then, unceremoniously calls him an Avenger, which gives, Peter this feeling of, I think it's the same thing as like giving him the tech suit. He was so excited to be an Avenger. I think that it put Peter in a place of vulnerability. You have, the Thor story. You know what? I don't even know if I can how I could really explain this. This movie was intense for me, and it was if I could basically just explain it in one way is it's almost the idea that um they were never going to be enough by themselves. I think this where it comes back to Civil War, or no, actually, Age of Ultron, where he says, we'll where Steve says we'll do it together, and Tony knows that it's almost a losing battle, and his whole purpose to go into Titan was not because they could win there; it was because he was trying to keep the damage to a minimum on Earth because he knew this was going to be a bloodbath.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
I mean, because if you think about it, like I think Tony learned from Lagos, from Sokovia, from the battle in New York, all of these things. Even in when we talked about in was it Johannesburg?
Right.
Anytime the Avengers are involved in something, there is mass destruction, and this is Tony's first attempt to try to bring the battle out of the Earth to prevent there from being more destruction, which I thought was impressive.
May I for just a moment?
Yeah,
Because it was
Yeah.
really it was the Maw that made Tony have to get involved in the ship. Before that, the fight was still right there on the ground, being thrown through New York. But because Pete sent Peter after Doctor Strange to keep him under wraps, literally, the Maw saw Peter trying to hold him and put them both on the ship. And then Peter was like, "Yo, Tony, I'm being beamed up," and there was no
but Doctor
choice.
Strange.
Yeah.
But Doctor Strange was was trying to come back.
Oh, he was like,
Tony
"Can we
was
turn
like,
the
let's
ship
take-
around?" And Tony was like, "Let's
Yeah,
do this.
Tony
Let's
was
take
like,
the fight to
"No,
him."
let's take the fight to him." So I feel like you both have valid points. I feel like it's a little bit. I think it's 50-50.
50-50.
I think it's 50-50. I don't think it was engineered. I don't think it was engineered by Tony to be like, let's take this fight off world. But I think once he got in the ship and he saw that it was already kind of like in space, he was like, yeah, let's keep this trajectory so that we can limit the bloodshed. I believe you guys are, it's 50-50. I don't think it's 100% one way or the other.
That's fair.
See
That's
that? I
right.
can see that.
I like it. And you're sitting in the middle of us, so that makes that works really well. You were saying, Tony, I wasn't trying to stop you. Yeah.
No, it's like, I'm sitting here like trying to talk through it. I'm trying to formulate. I'm like, geez, you gave me one of the hardest hitting like Marvel Avengers films to try to summarize. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my word, like there is so much to unpack with this movie. All I can say is this: if you haven't seen it, what's up? And if you have seen it, you can cry with me. The only thing that I have to say that I'm really bothered by is that there are people that are watching this thing, that are coming into Marvel now, and they don't have to wait a freaking year to see Endgame like the rest of us did, thinking half the world is dead.
Right.
But it's like I mean, things that I loved about this film. I love that the good guys lost at the end of this film. I thought it was necessary. It needed to have higher stakes, and I think Endgame brought that further with giving them more stakes. What happens to the MCU after Avengers Infinity War, is going to change the fabric. And I think that, they couldn't have anticipated COVID-19 and all this other stuff. But what they did with the storyline for Avengers from Infinity War and Endgame makes so much sense that they couldn't have planned it any better when it came to, overlooking 2020.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And it like at some points, and I mean, let's face it, this movie by itself has divided people. There are people that relate to Thanos, which I think is a crazy idea. It's like, oh well, it caused there to be more access to resources. No, he could have snapped more resources into existence. He was a flawed person. But here's the
He
thing:
went immediately for bloodshed.
I will say this: Thanos and Tony are two sides of a similar coin. They're both futurists. They're both doing what they think is right. The only thing is, Tony, at this point in Avengers Infinity War, he's willing to kind of like step back and say, I don't have all the answers.
Right.
And he's doing what he can. But it's not until this movie and the fact how Doctor Strange gives up the stone to save his life, because Doctor Strange has seen all the outcomes. And Tony is completely perplexed because it was a complete change in Doctor Strange's character. And for Tony to think, okay, why did he do that? And then it made him question. He completely trusted Strange after that point.
Well,
And
I would argue he didn't necessarily trust Strange. Sorry, this is an interesting one because there's a lot of debate, like you were saying. I would argue that he didn't know enough about Strange. The only encounter he ever really had with him was right there on Bleecker Street, right before the ship shows up, and he told him, "This is my time stone. Keep away from it." That's the only thing that he knows about him. Now, we as an audience, and of course, Wong and all those that saw Doctor Strange go through his journey know that he takes that thing very seriously. But the rest of the Avengers themselves don't actually know that. They barely know who he is as it is. So for me, Tony was baffled. He literally thought he lost. When he gets back in Endgame, he shows up and goes, "I lost the kid." Like he's totally this has ended him, and that speech he gives to Cap at the beginning of Endgame shows he's destroyed. Like this, he didn't trust Doctor Strange. I don't think, not until he started to see things unravel in Endgame. Okay, go ahead, Lala. Lala, go ahead. Lala, go. Please.
I just want to say, Tony has a knack for either vibing with people that are his opposite, like Banner, seeing something in them that they don't see in themselves, or he vibes with people that are similar to him, like personality-wise, like he did with Loki, right? Because him and Loki had a moment in Avengers, right? Like that ending when he's like, "I'll take that drink down," and that smirk on Tony's face, like, okay, I could probably like this guy, right? Tony and Strange are very similar. They both have big egos, ignored people in trouble until they were in trouble. And then their personalities changed. Right? So I feel like when Tony and Strange met in the Sanctum and Tony was throwing out jabs and Doctor Strange was able to bounce back, I think and then them being in space and Tony essentially saving him, I think a bond was made. Not saying that like they were like it was like kismet, like all three of us, but I'm saying that I just feel like a bond, some type of bond was made, right? And so even towards like because I think Tony was ready to die in Infinity War. I think when Thanos stabbed him, Tony was like, "Okay, this is it." So when Doctor Strange saved him, when somebody saves you, you kind of have like a little bit more respect for them. You kind of have a connection to them, like it's chemical, whether you want to believe it or not, right? And I'm not saying that they know each other through and through, but any TV show that you've seen where two people have been through some trash, like some craziness together, it bonds them when they come back amongst people that they know because they have this shared moment that nobody else had. Like Tony and Doctor Strange, besides like Thor, because at this time nobody even knew about Thor, they are the first two to kind of face Thanos in a way, like in a very like confrontational, like they had to fight Thanos type of way. They are like the first ones to like face him essentially because he didn't really face Thor. He did a little bit, but his people took care of that. Like so
well,
they're
not
the
only
first
that,
two.
they're the first from Midgard without a doubt to
Right,
face him.
without a doubt, to face him. So like that, I feel like that bonds them. So I kind of agree with Marvelite that, and with you a little bit because when it gets to Endgame, if he didn't trust him, he wouldn't have believed in Infinity War that he saw 14 million possibilities. For him to even turn to him and be like, "Yo, is this the one that we win?"
True.
And then for him to put up the one finger, he believed him enough to be like, "Well, if this is our one chance that we win, then what I'm thinking must be what we have to do to win." So I'm just saying, I feel like at a time he did trust him. But go ahead, Marvel. That's all.
Okay. So here's the thing. I think if we think this is going to touch a little bit on Endgame. As soon as Hulk told the Ancient One that he gave up the Time Stone, her entire approach to what Hulk was saying changed, and there's a reason why. Because she said that basically that Doctor Strange was the best of them, and she could see, up to his future, but she couldn't see her own, and of course we know why. But if you think about it, with that, Doctor Strange was all about little references. I think it's important to think that he can go back and he can do, he can tell you like the song, who sung it, when, what year it was released.
Memory.
He has an
Really.
attention to detail, and
Mhm.
so when they had that encounter on the ship before Tony convinces him to go to Titan, um, Doctor Strange specifically says, just understand, if it's a choice between saving you and the kid or protecting the time stone, I'm choosing the
Mhm.
time stone. And
Right.
then when at that point where Tony is about to die, Strange stops Thanos and without any tricks gives Thanos the time stone to save Tony. And when Tony looks at him, he says, "Why would you do that?" Because he remembers that conversation that they had. Strange specifically says, "We're in the end game now." And I think that's because, remember, we had that whole 14 million, possibilities. Um, and Tony says, "How many did we win?" And he said, "One." And when he said we're in the end game now, I think that brought Tony back to the conversation in Age of Ultron when he said, "That's the end game." And I believe that Strange was being very specific in how he said things. And I think Marvel, Marvel Studios is very specific in how they reference things.
Right.
And if we didn't know that the next movie was going to be Endgame, we should have known because of that. And that was my theory before they announced the conclusion to the Infinity Saga. It was going to be Endgame because of Strange.
Also, they let out the title in a song that was in Black Panther, and then had to clean it up by making a new version of the song because it's a song Lamar has with SZA. I think it's called All the Lights or something like that. She says "in game" in the song, and they took it off the airways and had to put a new version of it out because she let the title of the song out. They let the title of the song out before in 2018, before it was time for "in game" to come out.
That's wild.
And so Strange is specifically using that reference to call him back to that conversation that it's the end game. And then before Doctor Strange is dusted away, he tells Tony this was the only way. So yes, Tony was overcome with grief. I mean, everybody in the world is overcome with grief in the next part of it, within Endgame because of what happens. But I think when he finally realized, this is possible, and he makes the decision, I think that was where it took. Doctor Strange knew what had to happen. Tony didn't know what to do, but Strange gave him all of the hints to say, this is not over yet. I think Tony at that point had to trust him because, I mean, what's the first thing he says? Is this the one possibility? That has been resonating on Tony's mind this whole time, that he brought that up during that final battle. So I really do believe that there was a built of trust because I think Tony and Doctor Strange are very similar in the way that they approach things. They are 100%, set in their way on what they're going to do or what they want to happen because they think that they're right. And when Tony saw Strange willing to change, I think that was a moment for him, and I think he needed that. So I still stick by my side that he had to trust Strange at that point because I think Strange gave him what he needed to know that something more was happening. It just, I would be
trust people. I feel like you trust people that you're in battle with. I just feel like you do. Like if we're on the same side, there you might not 100% trust them, but there's a seed of trust being like planted there. Like because we're on the same side, we're fighting together, and then clinch it. You saved my life, like that when you didn't have to because you told me you wasn't going to, and I believed you. Like okay, because you were very adamant about it. So I think I agree with Marvelette. I feel like there was a seed of trust that eventually went over into Endgame.
It's just you can see that Tony doesn't necessarily like. I get what you guys are saying about the trust, but even with the speeches that he gives to Pepper in the beginning of Endgame and the things that lead up to when he finally, I think it's one of those things where you guys are right. The seed, I'll give you the seed, but I think there's so much doubt that he has between the moment when everybody dusts and of course the 5 years later in which they're finally on the battlefield and he's like, oh, I see it now. I'm starting to see it come to fruition. It's starting to make sense, especially seeing Thanos on the field when he fights with Cap and Thor, especially that he probably saw how that went back to, wait a minute, this is how I met these guys. So like it's wild that it all, like you said, Marvel Studios doing it. But also I think Tony probably went, wait a minute, the last time the three of us are on the field, we were fighting each other like this. Now we're fighting together, and there's a lot of symbolism there as well. But hello, Angel, and welcome back. We haven't seen you in a little while. Glad to see you, and welcome everybody else. Let me take a quick second, head over to the poster wall here, and these are the movies that we're covering tonight. We're in the middle of Infinity War right now, moving kind of seamlessly into Endgame, more than likely. We'll rate them as a pair probably, and then we did Spider-Man earlier, discussing both Tony Stark and the movies themselves and how good they are. And then we'll be hitting Loki in the last half hour. So that being said, let's get back to it. As far as the development for Tony Stark in this film, I see some of that selfishness we talked about, with him wanting to have a baby, but also like I think him working with Peter Parker and seeing how fun it was to have, a teenager to, get mad at and be a dad for, not in a bad way. What's your birthday? Happy birthday. Happy birthday. I wish I had a happy birthday alert to give. I don't. That's so sad.
Well, now you'll have one for the future.
I'm going to have to. Yeah. Aren't I? Do I? Now I have to see if I do. Anyway, that being said, we do need to move technically into Endgame kind of simultaneously, and I think you guys might agree that we can do the reviews both, since the movies are kind of like part 1 and part 2, basically.
One giant movie, essentially. If you really think about it, there's 2 parts.
Well, if you had never seen any of the MCU movies, and walked into Endgame, you would be lost. They don't backtrack and cover anything until halfway through the movie.
But I think you would still enjoy yourself. Like,
I agree.
Maybe that's me wishful thinking.
Yeah.
I still feel like you would enjoy yourself.
The big question would be if you didn't know who any of the characters were at all either. You just walked into it just blind. Like, what is this? What are Avengers? And why?
Yes, because Endgame starts with Hawkeye's family getting dusted. If that doesn't bring you in, I don't know what will.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Just saying.
You have to have empathy to start with. Anyway, Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, but you can. This is the great thing about the MCU and stuff. You can watch Avengers, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, and Endgame. You don't have to watch every single MCU movie. You can at least get the gist to appreciate. And I know people that actually did that. They only watched the Avengers films, and then of course after Endgame, that's when they started watching all the other stuff.
That's wild. I can't do that. And bless you.
I couldn't do it either. Yeah, but if you think about it, I mean, even leading up to Infinity War and Endgame, they were doing like Marvel, the Avenger, like the Marvel movie marathons, where you could go in and watch all of the films. I mean, people were spending a week of their life doing this, which, I mean, I can't say that I didn't do it.
I just did it at home.
Yeah.
I didn't go to the theater.
Yeah, me too.
I saw about half the Marvel movies in theater. It was usually the ones that got me excited. I've seen all the Avengers movies in theaters. But
I've seen all the Marvel movies in theaters. And I've seen some multiple, and I've taken my family to see some.
Nice.
So to see them all. So if I went to go see it, my family would go see it, like my brother and my mom.
That's awesome.
And I would essentially see it 3 times. I would see it by myself. I would see it once with my brother and once with my mom, because I could never get them all on the same schedule.
I like that. And that's understandable. Everybody's schedules are always weird. I am trying for an earlier schedule at work, so we might have an earlier slot for this as well, by the way. Just thought I'd put that out there for the whole world to hear.
Just real quick.
Please.
Infinity War, I see a growth in Tony, because Iron Man Tony wouldn't want to have a kid. He's so damaged. The kid would not even cross his mind. And the fact that he's having essentially a premonition in this one that he's going to have a child named Morgan shows that he feels that there's some light at the end of this tunnel that he's been in since the first Iron Man. To see Bruce, I feel like for him was a shock. that was a good friend of his. And then for that friend to come back and be like, yo, Thanos is the dude that we've been, this is the guy. Like, I think that shook him up as well, but also gave him a sense of relief that everything that he's been doing up until this point hasn't just been him being a crazy scientist, billionaire, or whatever, just creating stuff out of nothing. That everything he's done up to this point meant something.
Right.
Ultron, those people didn't die for anything. These people in Johannesburg, like age, all these things didn't happen for nothing.
He felt
right?
redeemed
Because
to some degree as well. He felt.
I would say to some degree. I don't think he would automatically take all the blame off of him, but I think to some degree he was like a slight sense of relief, because if I'm telling everybody that this is going to happen and everybody thinks I'm crazy because it hasn't happened yet, and then it finally happens, I feel a little vindicated.
Right.
Because, because I could see it, nobody else could. And I feel like that was Tony. Tony had the vision, like, ironically.
Well, Vision would have been his first child.
Exactly. So I feel like Tony had the vision that no one, like, he could see farther, and you have to give props to Wanda, because she opened up that like third eye in him to see a little bit deeper than what he was already seeing. So for me in Infinity War, I feel like Tony will always be Tony. Tony will always be cocky. Tony will always be snarky and quick-witted and
Starky.
He tells I know, right? I was proud of myself for that one. He will always be this person, but at the I feel like at the core of it, he loves so hard, and he loves this group of people so hard. It's very similar to Natasha, who's willing to kill herself. A slight chance of them winning.
Right.
Right. I feel like Tony learned a lot from Cap, that he's willing to put himself on the line, essentially, just so his people could win. And so for me, he grew tremendously, because we talk about how in Homecoming he didn't listen to Peter, but in Infinity War, when they were in that ship, and he was like, "All right, tell me what you would do. What would you do if this happened?" He finally listened,
and Peter was right.
And Peter was right.
100% right.
100% correct. Like, it might have been a weird way of doing it.
Right.
After Berlin, he's got good ideas. They had to know that.
He does.
Right. Hey, listen to his pop culture knowledge, man. It's solid.
Listen, and I feel like that's part of Tony's growth, because I feel like there are beats and moments in between that we don't see that he grows in. So the fact that he listened, the fact that he kind of passed the baton to Peter and was like, "Okay, you're here now. We have to work together." Whereas a previous Tony will be like, "I got the answers. I know what I'm doing. Sit back. Let me handle this."
Yeah, go hang in the corner, kid.
Right? Go hang in the, you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like there's a growth. I feel like there's a growth there. It might not be like a 10, 20, 50 times, but I feel like that heart grew a little bit for him. So for me, Tony in Infinity War, even with the people, even when he met the Guardians of the Galaxy, you can see the heartbreak in him when they all faded away.
Right.
When Quill faded, and then his heart really broke when Peter faded away.
I think all of our hearts broke when Peter faded away.
Of course it did. Listen, my heart broke doubly. This is just a little side note. My heart broke doubly when Peter faded away, because he said the exact lines that David Tennant said in Doctor Who when his character was regenerating. And so I was like, did he just say it? It broke me. It broke me. So it hit doubly for me. Any Doctor Who / MCU fans, I know y'all felt my pain. But so for me, you see the growth in him. So, and even and for me, even getting into Endgame, just a tidbit in that beginning where he bonds with Nebula, right? Like, where he's literally with a robot. He's trying to give her food, and she's like, "Dude, just eat." Leaving the message for Pepper, like, these little breadcrumbs. A previous Tony just wouldn't do these things.
Real quick, she's a cyborg, mostly cybernetic, but she
Mostly
could
cybernetic.
right, she could eat the food, but she doesn't need it as badly as he does.
No. Exactly.
right.
She could eat it, but I feel like for him being a mechanic, he knows that.
Right.
I'm sure he clocked her the moment he met her. He probably looked at her body, her face, her everything. I'm pretty sure he knew that, but he was still willing to give.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be funny if that food was yarn root.
Oh my gosh, that would have been great.
Why am I
Maybe she
missing
would have
that
hit him with
reference?
Guardians of the Galaxy. She keeps one in the
Oh
yard.
yeah. Never mind.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
It's not ripe.
It was a little bit
Okay.
of a throwback to
Okay.
when the fact that Robert Downey basically eats on set all the time, and he also tried to offer Bruce. You know, he offers these very jaded characters food for some reason. It's really this interesting.
Yeah, he's like
trope.
blueberries. He did that in Avengers. He's like blueberries.
Yep.
You know,
Chocolate covered blueberries. Yep.
Yeah.
Except this
Yeah.
time, so I'll give you the growth
Yeah.
because in that one, after he gave him the blueberries, he poked him to try to get Hulk to come out. In this one, he gave her some food and then they played football. So
Yeah.
he didn't try to mess with her
It's
like he
growth.
might have with. So there's some growth there. Of course, I think they did a fantastic job in Infinity War. We all knew Robert Downey Jr. was going to be leaving the MCU. There was no doubt. We heard the production and money, and he was sick of it, and not sick of it, but 10 years of one thing. I can understand it. So we all kind of knew like how are they going to get rid of him, right?
He's like dang there. He's 60 now. Okay.
Because they knew that we knew they were going to get rid of him, though. They played on that a lot of times. And I think they do it a total of 4 times before they finally get to that final moment. And one of them is, of course, when they stab him, through in Infinity War. The next time is right there at the beginning of Endgame, where it looks like he's drifted off to death. When
he's
Captain
so
Marvel shows.
emaciated.
Yeah, you think he's dead. I mean, like the music, the way that Nebula sets him up, like the whole deal. And you think he's dead. And of course, we're all like, right at the beginning of the movie, man, like what? I thought, they got me. I believed it. And then they did it again later. Like there was a couple of these moments.
When he passed out and he got really, really mad at Cap.
Yeah, there you go.
Out.
There's another one. We thought we maybe, or my wife even thought when he ripped, because she had forgotten about it in Iron Man 3. So when he ripped the arc reactor off of his chest, she was like, oh, that's right. He won't die just from doing that. But for her, they got in one more on her. So I thought that was pretty clever. I think the dynamic between the characters in Endgame, since we're just going to kind of move right over into it, is very genuine compared to almost all the other movies. Especially, I think the one character that gets some of the greatest development is Rocket Raccoon. He humbles more, like his ego is that on par with Thanos and Tony and Doctor Strange. Like Rocket is the shit. Like he knows he's the shit. He knows he can blow up a moon. It ain't a problem. And you're in his way.
But I think it's because he got his like comeuppance in a way in Guardians 2 with Yondu. You know what I mean? Like his growth, because it's like it took him having to talk to Yondu and be like, you just like me, for him to lose his family in Infinity War, for him to be a little bit more better in Endgame, to be like, yo, I lost my whole family, you know what I mean? Like for him to kind of like grow up a little bit to realize it, like, and then again he lost Groot like twice, and that just breaks my little heart there. Okay,
I just came to the realization. So Infinity War, when Rocket is having the talk with Thor, trying to give him the pep talk because you can see how depressed he is. I think that's Rocket trying to pay forward what Yondu did for him in Guardians
for sure.
2.
For
and
sure, but he does
that makes her really sad because he
Rocket,
struggles.
like,
the best thing he can do is just give him an eye. I mean, like
not an eye. He gave him a poopy eye.
I would have watched that first, but
that's so Rocket though.
But
and
but also I feel like he's trying to be. I feel like he's trying to be like a little. I'm doing and a little bit of Quill, because that's Quill's thing too, to be like, how's everything? Is everything okay? A little bit, to be like, just a check in. He's a check-inner, and I think Rocket realizes, like, if you want to be a leader, if you want to say that this is your ship and that you are the leader, you have to check on people. You have to make sure that people are in the right mainframe. You just have to.
He was never concerned with people at that until that. I mean, like, after that.
Exactly. And
Well,
to the
maybe.
point, so when he sat down next to Nebula and put his hand on Nebula,
Oh yeah, no, that got
Nebula,
me.
oh my
That this whole
gosh,
movie gets me. No,
oh,
I think him
oh,
meeting Thor, meeting the God of Thunder, and the God of Thunder going, dude, my life sucks, and look at everything that's happened to
yeah,
me, and I'm still trudging forward as a hero. What are you doing,
you
Rocket?
can't
What are
do
you doing, Rabbit?
it.
And and I love that on Asgard they call them rabbits. That's just the way they do it.
I'll tell you this right now, though. The thing that drives me nuts is, I mean, we have so much character development, especially with Nebula as well. You realize that football game with Tony is the first time she's ever won in the MCU.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, she is
First
a
time
loser.
she's a loser, and that's why when she jumped back, when he's like she
you
won,
won.
and he
Yeah,
went to shake
it
her
was
hand, that
that makes
gesture
that
from Tony like
Well,
changed her perspective. Like, I'm
yeah,
not a loser
that
he
anymore.
gave me
also
chills.
equalized her by shaking her hand like a person.
Yeah,
Most people have
yeah,
nobody's ever shook her hand. They've grabbed
Yeah,
it and
yeah.
ripped it off and built it. And
Something she's probably haven't hasn't gotten since before he started ripping her to pieces and putting her back together. You know what I mean? Like they treat
she's
you like a
yeah.
cyber long enough, like you don't expect, and especially when even your sister, you felt like your sister didn't even treat you like you were a human. So to have this actual human being say you won, good job, where nobody has probably said good job to her in her life, like that made it. I feel like that made a difference to her.
yeah.
And I feel like that's the only reason I really do. I mean, I know that the other Guardians met him first, but I really feel like Nebula is the reason they came to his funeral. So I feel like their time on that ship bonded them in a way.
Yeah, and then they served
Guardians, yeah,
doing missions after the snap. I mean, they're together the whole time. So they're on the Minotaur and they're just going off and doing things. I really hope that they play on that when we get to Love and Thunder and Volume 3, that the
mm-hmm.
Guardians, that there's more of an inside bond, because technically at this point Rocket and Nebula have been together longer than they have been with the rest of the Guardians.
Right.
Exactly.
And Thor with them as
And
well.
it's kind of like,
Right.
and it's kind of
And
like
not there,
Nebula
but
has
like
taken
they know him and they've met him. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Nebula has taken the place of Gamora in a sense, because when she put herself back together, she said she called Mantis personally. Like to me, that hit a little bit differently because she's like, Mantis, like I need you to come to these like coordinates, like because she led them there. Like she told them where she was, like where she was, what was happening. So like the fact that she's in communication with them, like that, I really, I wasn't really on board with Thor 4, but if you're going to give me more B characters, no offense, love Thor, love Quill, but it's the dynamic of the team for me in Guardians is what makes Guardians Guardian.
I hope
So
that they make Thor exactly what they should do with Jane Foster and bring the comic story. And I'm not going to say what that is. I think Marvelite knows what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
if they can do it in one movie and they do the pacing right and they get it done, I think it'll be a beautiful final Thor film. And I think it will be a final Thor film.
I think it will be not maybe not exactly how you want it to be, but the way that Chris Hemsworth has been working out, I think this is going to be his last Thor film.
It probably
he's
should be.
been on record saying he'll do it as long as they want him to. We'll probably not get like an independent Thor film. We may see him
In everything.
throughout the yeah. And you know what? And I'm cool with that because essentially he is a god. So like, if y'all don't find a way to kill him somewhere in Thor 4, I would expect him to pop up somewhere. And maybe not all the time, but I would expect him to pop up like every blue moon. So I'm fine with that.
I also think that and this is totally an aside, but we've got some time, with the advent of the Eternals coming, I think we're going to get more even into Thanos' backstory, because he's technically got the deviant gene. And
exactly, I wouldn't mind Josh Brolin coming back in a flashback or whatever, see more about his backstory, because they already gave us 2 different versions of him, which were essentially the same version, just in different timelines. So like the young, let's kill him Thanos turned into this like, I just want to heal the world Thanos. So I'm excited to see the origin of, or at least more on the background of like where he grew up, how he was treated different, because essentially he's like a Loki character in a way. Like he was different from everybody else around him. He knew he was different. treated different in a way, and so that's probably why Loki was kind of seduced by that.
No, absolutely. Especially in the Avengers era when he's like, oh, this guy's a lot
Yeah,
like me. Well, even if
for
he
sure.
didn't know. But he had to, knowing that we know that as Guardians know about Infinity Stones already, and that's obviously present. Because we don't know that Loki knows about Infinity Stones on the level until the show. Till Loki's show where he says it outright, like, okay, he knows this.
I feel like he did, because I feel like if Thor knew, Loki knew.
Right, that's what I'm saying. No,
Because
it's
Loki was,
implied.
in
It's
the
implied.
shadow of,
Absolutely.
it's implied in the Thor line.
Because they go to
the
Thor, they're
film,
like,
so yeah.
explain all these stones to us, and he explains them all in Endgame. So that totally means that Odin sat down and explained these stones to the kids when they were young. That aside, that also means he knew who Thanos was. Like, that would have been a name he would have heard of growing up on Asgard. He would have heard the name Thanos. It wouldn't have been like living on Earth where we never heard of these people. He would have been like, no, it's the Mad Titan. He lives on the other side of the galaxy. We just don't go to that side. That's why we stopped where we stopped, although we know that's not true. So I think we're at a point where we got about 15 minutes left. I want to put this out there because I had a revelation watching Endgame. And I always forget that movies get to make the rules, right? Movies lay down the rules, and then if they follow them, you get a nice, tight, beautiful film at the end that's rewatchable, and you don't have a problem with it. You can forgive, this or that error, but the movies make the rules. That being said, Endgame does a very, very, very good job of explaining what a hero is and how they get to be one. And it's actually through some of the dialogue that Doctor Strange gives, as well as in Infinity War, as well as some of the dialogue that Tony gives there towards the end of the battle and everything that's happening. What I'm alluding to is that I have to concede that this argument over a month that I have been wrong. That Endgame very clearly defines that Tony Stark is a superhero and a hero, and it's not Iron Man, it's Tony Stark. And it's not because he's actually necessarily a hero, but because he's a hero for the moment that we need him to be. And that's the way that things have to be. And Strange, of course, that's the one. That's literally that one out of 14 million. So the other 14.2 million times, he's a total dick and is still selfish and everything fails.
You don't know. You cannot say that. Stop it. Stop it. No, do not know.
In one of the reality, the rat doesn't step on the button. On one reality, Thanos, Thanos gets the snap at the end. It's not, it's at one moment, it could be that Tony dies at the beginning of the battle at one point, or gets crushed under the building. There's so many possibilities as to what happens.
I know.
But when you think, honestly, and here's the thing that I think is, it's not so much that he didn't just become a hero at that point. Tony is in a process, and I think this is what we have to realize. We have this perception of heroes and people that are in the right, that we think that they at the bat, they're Steve Rogers, Captain America, where they just have that sense of what it means to self-sacrifice, and to do those things. And honestly, if you think about it, and I'll be honest with you, when I looked at Captain America: The First Avenger, Steve is the hero of the moment who has the principles, but he's the one that got the super soldier serum. If you go back and watch that film, and I'll be very honest with you, I think the person who is more of a hero than Steve Rogers until he gets that serum is Peggy Carter. Peggy Carter, when you go look at when they throw the dummy grenade on the ground, Steve was the one that got to it first, but Peggy was going to it as well, and she stopped when he fell to it, but she was willing to do that. Plus, her being a woman in that time, trying to do and make a difference and standing her ground and with the ultimate purpose. I cannot wait till the What If series to see her be. Basically Captain Britain at that point, because I mean, excited. she is probably my favorite female, in the MCU. and even just like referencing, going back when you look at like the Howling Commandos and stuff, when there's references, but really you get more of a Sharon Carter feel for the Peggy Carter in the MCU.
Ooh.
But when you, I mean, so yeah, Steve's got the morals, which made him a good candidate to be the super soldier, but something made him that. Tony Stark was what he was. He was everything that he needed. He just created the suit that was the mechanism for him to do what he needed to do. And he came to that realization. He didn't do it right. And I think that's the thing. We have this perception of heroes. Heroes don't always make the right calls, but if they're willing to learn from those mistakes. And Tony learned in some of the wrong ways at first. He thought better tech would make him a better hero. He thought that, a better team would make him a better hero. He thought that having safeguards that ultimately, were, insufficient and or were, world destroying, was the way to try to protect those that he loves in the world around him. But it wasn't until he realized that, and I think that we learned that Tony could not rest because he knew of the danger. And I think a hero doesn't rest because they know that there are things that they do, or
Well, you're not
Go ahead.
wrong. You're not wrong, Tony. Look at the heroes we've had for the last year and a half in this world that have been putting their lives on the line for all of us, doing exactly that because they run towards the fire instead of away. And I think that Tony would have run away from the fire for the first 3/4 of the MCU and then realized he needed to run at it. And there is the moment in the ship you guys were talking about. He ran at the fight rather than trying to avoid it and protect from it. And that could be the moment where he decides to go to Titan. Right. That Titan moment could be the moment he turned into a hero. Which makes my comment totally bullcrap.
Because Pepper wanted him to turn around.
Right.
Pepper wanted him to turn around. Pepper wanted him to come home.
And the selfish thing would have been to turn around.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I need to go back to something real quick. So you're saying that when he decided to go to Titan, that was a heroic move?
It had to be the moment in which he was leading to becoming the hero. And I already admitted, Tony Stark is a hero. I've been wrong.
I just want to hear you say it again.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I didn't think of this until that ship moment until just now, but I came to this conclusion in Endgame. And again, I could be biased because, he does remind me of my dad a lot in this movie. And so maybe I'm like, I want my dad to be a hero, psychology, whatever. But that could be the case. But I couldn't find an argument past the movie's rules. And that's my big thing as a movie buff and why I do movie reviews and why, beyond the MCU. If a movie sets down a standard and a set of rules and it follows it, I can't really argue with that. It's not really my place to argue with it because within that story, the rules have been set and the parameters have been set. To apply my real life to it is kind of a tragedy and pointless. People do that too often. Just enjoy the ride. And if the ride gives you rules and the rules are followed, good ride.
And honestly, I think, okay.
I feel like we give, I don't know, like I feel like everybody's definition of a word is not the same. Right? So what I think is a hero might not be what Marvel Light thinks and what you think, because I feel like everybody's pinnacle for like what a hero is they automatically go to Captain America. Right? He jumped on a grenade. It was a dummy grenade, but nobody knew that. Like he jumped on a grenade. Mind you, Captain America is my favorite character. So like don't think I don't love Captain America. I'm obsessed with him. But also he is flawed in his own way. Yes, he jumps on grenades, and yes, he goes into the fire, but he's also one-minded. He doesn't think for himself. He follows all the rules, and he doesn't question anything. And do I want a hero that does that all the time, but doesn't think like, is this the right thing for us to do in this moment?
Wait a minute. Lala, you have hit on something because Captain America actually starts breaking the rules in Civil War. And only after that does he become worthy to hold Mjolnir.
My favorite phrase out of that Infinity War, is I'm not asking for forgiveness.
Oh, Jesse, welcome, and
thanks, Jesse.
4 months.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's insane, and thank you so much, and welcome. We are kind of at the end of my groveling for being humble about being completely wrong for a month and a half. But I love it because I'll play the devil's advocate anyway.
Let's also mention Psychopunk subscribed 4 months earlier up in the
did.
chat. I don't think
he absolutely did. Yeah. And let's go over here for Jesse. These are the movies we've been reviewing this evening: Spider-Man: Homecoming, Avengers: Infinity War, Avengers: Endgame, and we are about 9 minutes, so we got some time. 9 minutes from reviewing the first episode of Loki, which I think deserves a full half hour, even though the show's a half hour.
But I just want to say that, like, at first you would think that he is like Captain America is this hero and that he makes this change, but he's still a hero. So I feel like the same can be said for Tony. He might not have started that way, but he ended that way. I feel like his ultimate end game was to be a hero.
That's fair.
So
Now,
so yeah.
Can we discuss why I had this feeling in the first place? Because this is a big thing, and it's actually something we haven't discussed, but it's important to Endgame as a whole, and that is the decision. We are, and I'm glad that you're lurking. Thank you very much for lurking, and please enjoy work as best you can. I know that's difficult for me sometimes, but do your best. The whole idea that I said Tony wasn't a hero is because of his decision when this all goes down to say that they can't go back 5 years and just start fresh. And this still bugs me a bit, and I'd love to discuss this if we can. If he does go back in time, because they have the Infinity Gauntlet, which means they can literally do whatever they want. There's no end to what they can choose. And we know this based upon Thanos' speech about breaking this world down atom by atom and rebuilding it and creating life. And it's an Infinity Gauntlet. You can do what you want with it. The snap is whatever. They use it just for stylization. So that being said, they could have gone back 5 years and just ended Thanos then, brought everybody back to life right then, and started over. Why couldn't they?
No, they couldn't. Because the movie already explains to you that when Rhodey wanted to say, like, why don't we just go and kill Thanos, like baby Thanos, and be done with this? And Banner's like, that's not how time travel works.
Right, agreed.
All you do is create another timeline. So if you went back however many years to kill Thanos, it wouldn't have killed our Thanos. It would have just made a branch in the timeline where these events still happened, but Thanos died.
I'm literally talking.
There's no going back 5 years because you're just creating a branch where.
If you're using time travel and the quantum mechanics they were talking about, or even the time stone, I would agree with you. But this is literally remaking the universe as if that never happened. So because it's an Infinity Gauntlet,
want to use this,
it's like an improbability drive.
To snap the world back 5 years is what you're saying.
Yeah, because if you can snap and have everybody disappear from half the world's population disappear, or you can snap and kill an entire army, you could snap and remake reality back 5 years. Now, I think Marvel is doing a good job in Loki of establishing that that's not possible. So they're retconning that. Mm-hmm. But without Loki, it doesn't make sense because the Infinity Gauntlet is an all-powerful tool. You can literally create and destroy life with it. So if that's the case, why couldn't you go back?
For me, I don't think it's selfish because you're giving the powers of a god to somebody that you didn't first believe was a hero. So it's like, why would you give the powers of a god to somebody that you don't think is a hero? Because will he be making the right decision? Also, it's not fair to add. It's been 5 years. You don't know how many children have been born within those 5 years. You don't know if people will still keep their memories. So you're going to erase a 5 year, like a 5 years of life from people that you don't even know, which is very unfair. Like,
wouldn't they be born again anyway, though? Wouldn't the same?
Would they?
Oh no, because half of the population isn't there.
No, because my thought would be like a Flashpoint type of thing. I might have came back and did it and turned it back. But now Cisco got powers. His brother is dead. Caitlyn got powers. Like, things aren't. It's like a butterfly effect. Things aren't. It's similar, but they're not the same.
I personally think that when they're talking about where Tony says, don't, keep what we've got, I don't think he's just talking about Morgan. I mean, we saw in Sam Wilson, Captain America, with Falcon and Winter Soldier, where, for the 5 years after the snap, the world was kind of without borders and people were prospering. And I think people learned a new way to live. And the problem that came in with Falcon and Winter Soldier is we're seeing that the old guard has being returned back, and they're now coming to terms with the world that is better than when they left it. And so there's this conflict, and that's where the Flag Smashers get involved. And so you've got, you've got, families that where, let's say one of the family members were dusted, and there are restructured families because they thought that they would never come back, and children are born from that. And let's say those children did something. We don't know all of the things that happened like as breakthroughs for the last 5 years. Stark Industries. I mean, you're listening to what Pepper's talking about talking about what was it about composting and stuff. What if Stark Industries helped to supply, with foods, do things with like food supplies or with medical
New
technology,
strains of things or anything, yeah.
and then if they go
Antivirus
back,
stuff and
what if COVID did happen in the MCU, but because there's half of the population, it didn't get worldwide, and people were able to focus on solving it. And we're living in the reality where they went back, and we don't know what happened, with the snap. And look what
Exactly.
last year was all about.
and
So
now we
all
have
this-
no superheroes, Tony. What did they do?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
the TVA
Sorry.
got involved because this is the wrong
question
reality. We're
is-
about to be
The question
reset.
is
There you go.
who had the gauntlet, because they didn't do it right.
Right.
They didn't,
Now,
they,
Now, if so, those are all very valid points, but I have to offer one contrarian point because it's how I'm built. So,
Yeah.
and I love your points because they do. You validated that. You have definitely argued not correctly. That's not the word. Successfully against my point. I can't refute what you've said, but there's a caveat. When they do snap everybody back into existence, there is a moment at the end of Infinity War where you see a helicopter hit a building, and that helicopter had a pilot in it that disappeared before the helicopter hit a building, and that helicopter was in the air. And when that person got returned to exactly where they were when they snapped their fingers, everyone that was in airplanes fell to their death. That's a fact.
Do you really think that when they decided to snap everybody into existence, that discussion did not take place? And part of the reason why Thor did not snap is because his mindset would have left them up in the air and falling from the sky. But when Bruce Banner, the idea was bring everyone back, do not change the present, bring everyone back safe and sound. That yes, people got knocked over by basketball players in the thing, and we saw the kid mayhem in the hospital. But I think there was that discussion. Okay, there are airplanes that crashed. Let's make sure those people come back, on the ground. Let's do this. And so when Bruce did it, and in fact, he didn't just snap people back into existence. He was trying to snap some specific things, and so he had in his mind trying to bring Nat back.
I know, but that wasn't that taking all of his focus beyond just getting everybody back. I mean, I would argue it wouldn't have been good either way. Some people had to die. There were some consequences.
Part of me feels like, well, I don't know, because it's like, to me, that's a valid question, because I know a lot of people thought about that. But also, I feel like he's so happy about that. Look, he's like did a little jig and everything.
It was more like I don't know, but yeah.
But I also feel like even though these people came back where they were, I feel like the gauntlet is magic, right? So I feel like depending, since we don't know exactly the phrasing and what Bruce thought or what he said or whatever, because we don't even know what Tony said when he snapped. We don't even know what Thanos literally said when he snapped. He just said, this is why he was like, I want half of the population to disappear, but like there's no telling what he actually thought.
Well, yeah,
when he snapped. So there's
that's a fair point.
So there's no way to know when Bruce snapped what he actually thought. And just because if you think about it, she woke up like Maria woke up like she came back like she was asleep this whole time, right? Like she was asleep this whole time. It was other people that came back walking as though they had never not
see anybody come back.
Monica Rambeau.
In that is the only time. But I'm saying in the two films, we actually never get to see. We just see them leave and how they dust.
We never get to see.
But we don't just see how, the way they come back.
WandaVision, we see how some people come back. So for me, I would think that these people came back in New York, but they just didn't come back in the sky. I feel like if they were getting on a helicopter, they might came back, like at the landing pad, like getting on to it. If that's what they, like if that's what they were getting into. Because now what I'm thinking is, where did hope come from, right? Because Because my thing would be maybe because the Doctor Strange and his people are protecting these different sanctums in these different areas. Who's to say that they didn't save these people that probably came out in the middle of the sky, because Hope and her people were on a building, but she came through a
portal.
breach just like a portal, just like everybody else did. I'm still on the flat.
So no, you're right. So Strange knowing what was going to happen, just like he told Peter, because he even tells Peter, we got to do this, and he's like, okay. So Strange at that point is going through portals, and he's telling Wong's telling everybody else, and that's why we don't see them right away. They're gathering right now,
Because think about it, he snapped because I remember watching Endgame. Banner snapped and he passed out because all that gamma radiation, I'm about to die right now.
Right.
He passed out, and you see Cap fight and do all this kind of stuff by himself, and then you hear Sam's voice. I literally was in the theater like, oh my God, he did snap. I was like, where is everybody? I was like, I kind of forgot that everybody, quote unquote, came back because we didn't physically see them come back. So I think that was like a little Easter egg when Peter tells Tony, like, yo, Dr. Strange, he did this with the little girl that he said they need us. He obviously knows. He must have told Wong, and he must have spread that word. And I think they went and protected everybody.
So they might not have had everybody on the field. There were still people out there catching people like softballs. I'll give it to you.
I think so, though.
I'm gonna give it to you.
I think so.
No, that's a good argument. I like it. I like headcanon that fills in those little gaps. So it's beautiful. Tony, what do you got?
Okay, so first of all, I personally think that they weren't catching people. I think that they were too busy getting earpieces to everybody so they could actually hear Captain America say "Avengers Assemble." But that's just my thought. Now, second of all, I believe when you think about how Thanos snapped everyone out of existence, it was crucial to have the Soul Stone. I think he would have had the power to kill half the universe without the Soul Stone, but the Soul Stone was crucial because it gave him the ability to determine, or to let there be a random determination. I think the only thing was Thanos specifically chose the original 6 Avengers to stay because he wanted them to be aware and to see their failure. So at Infinity War, that was specific, but that was his undoing, and I know Doctor Strange knew that.
Do you think that he chose that?
I believe he chose that. We know that he was aware of the Avengers in 2014 because of the 2012 attack on New York.
Right.
And so I think that, and you could just see his disgust in the Avengers in when he found out that the Avengers were doing what they were doing. But I believe this discussion had to have taken. Let me ask you a question. We've all seen Aladdin. Have you ever sat down and thought, what would your 3 wishes be?
Yes.
Because you don't want to mess it up, right?
No, because those 3 wishes change. And if you asked my 12-year-old self what those wishes were, they'd be very different than if they were right now.
Right. So. But if you think about it, you want to go through, because I really believe Aladdin's wishes were really ridiculous because he was doing them on the moment. But you think they planned this time heist down to the T. They had to know all of the thoughts. I mean, you have the smartest people that were still alive in the room trying to figure out what would be the best things to do, not only with retrieving the stones, but also how to bring everybody back. And so I don't think they took all of this time planning on where to go get the stones to save the Pym particles, all to be like, oh yeah, we got the stones now. What are we going to do? Let's just snap and see what happens. I really believe that they planned this out.
The second half.
Yes, and I believe the only audible for the snap was trying to bring Nat back because she was not part of the original conversation and then preparing.
I like that. I like that. I can see it. There's a lot of stuff that they leave open though. I did hear one thing before we move into Loki. Go ahead, Lala. Go ahead.
I just want to real quick touch on the whole earpiece part. Right? I believe that everybody didn't have an earpiece. I really don't believe everybody had an earpiece. Because if you go back to Infinity War, all those guys were connected by earpieces. There's nothing to say that even 5 years later, that connection is not still valid, because Black Widow was still doing stuff at the compound. That technology still exists, and they would all also been connected in that way. So Sam would still have that connection when he came back, and so would Ant-Man, because Ant-Man was already there, but Ant-Man and what's her name?
Wasp.
What is her name? Yes, are
Wasp.
connected. Like their suits, their suits are connected. So
Okay.
obviously that like
You're
that
not wrong.
to that. So I don't think everybody had an earpiece because it makes sense that my guy from Black Panther had an earpiece because they were all in Infinity War together and they were all connected and talking. But it's not really. He says assemble, and the only people that kind of yell at first are the people that were with him in Infinity War, and then that triggered everybody else, and then they all started running.
I'm going to back her up with the
So-
fact that Clint's phone is still working and having service after 5 years, even though his wife has been dead and gone, and he's been Ronin for 5 years. So, I think if that phone's connected, those earpieces are still connected too.
I
Okay,
also
okay,
feel,
I'll
but I
concede
also
that.
feel as though I really feel like, and I couldn't see feeling any gaps in that whole doing this for this most part, but I also feel like Black Widow has something to do with that as well. Because how else? Like I feel like they was tracking him some way. He had a phone of him doing something. I feel like I know some stuff had to be done. They might not have had all the satellites in the world, but they had Rhodey working on stuff. They was tracking him some type of way, and they never say how they were tracking him. So it's easy to say that his phone was still in business, and that's how they were tracking him
I like
throughout
that.
doing all these
Oh,
places he was at.
you have
So
solved a problem I've had with that movie for a long time. Thank you.
it hurt him.
She just
He
Logan
still have
Lucky.
the phone.
Right. No, I like it. He's had it
She
the whole
just put a
time, and
Logan Lucky
that's
on
where he
time.
looks at his wife's picture. That's all I need right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Oh
so
my goodness.
we're gonna have to review these films in 2 minutes, as far as just our
Okay.
our rating, the
That's
rating
cool.
we give, and then let's give 20 minutes to Loki because I think it definitely deserves some time. And of course, next week we will
For
be
sure.
talking about episode 2 and so on. We're going to be covering Loki every week, and we already have our movies planned out for next week as well. We'll be discussing that.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't remember them, but we'll talk about that later.
right. So that being said, I am going to go 10, 10, 10, 10. Done.
Aw, that's so great. You gave it 3 10s.
No, 4 10s. Two 10s, and then 2 10s for my kid review.
Oh yeah, because we're doing Infinity War and Endgame. Okay.
Right.
I will honestly do the exact same thing. And you know what? No, I won't. I will say 9, 9, 10, 10, 10.
Ooh. Where's that third 10 coming from?
What do you mean 13?
You said 9, 9, 10, 10, 10.
Well, 9.9.
Oh,
9.9,
God.
10, 10, 10. So
I didn't hear the point. That's perfect. And then Tony, what do you got?
I'm gonna have to go with you, Snidbits. Honestly, I think the only downside to the saga now is if you did not experience it when it came out, like the rest of us, the sheer sadness that happens when you realize they lose an Infinity War, or you lose Peter Parker. Because I listen, I remember there was this teenage girl that I got her into Marvel. She was excited about it. And I promise you, she fell in love with Tom Holland just in time for him to die, to dust away.
Uh-oh.
And to see her sorrow was just soul soothing. I mean, I don't know what it was. I found joy in that. And then like knowing that he would come back, there was obviously going to be a return, but her to have to wait a year was just exciting. And then even for me, like, I mean, if you go back in that time, the subjection of like just trying to figure out what could possibly happen, it was the best experience. And then when they punched you in the stomach at the first 5 minutes of Endgame, it made it all worth it. And to see all of those inside jokes leading up, just really coming at it, I mean, it's hilarious. I mean, Captain America is saying language in Age of Ultron, but he's cursing in Endgame, and it was it's like the development of all of them. I thought it was a great movie. There's always little things you can nitpick, but 10's all across the board. I could never be happier, and it's now my my New Year's Eve movie to watch at 9:32.2.
I like that.
Because when Thor snaps, that's when New Year's happens. So
when Tony snaps.
yeah, I do that every time.
yeah, when
When Tony snaps. I do that every time. It's so good.
Um,
Yeah.
so this is I also want to be clear because of course we're all Marvel fans, and if we ever do a DC movie, everybody that watches this is going to be like, oh, you guys just love Marvel, and that's fine, it's true. But as a movie viewer who loves movies and doesn't rate everything a 10, I don't throw 10s out all the time. The movies have to be pretty
Me
damn
neither.
solid. So
Me neither.
these movies deserve the credit and the groundwork that was laid, even if you're not into superheroes. They're just well done films. So you will be a guest when we do DC films, but you got to be prepared. I don't have a lot of positive things to say about anything since Man of Steel. You want to go back before that? I got lots of positive things to say about Superman and Batman and not Green Lantern.
Dark Knight trilogy.
Listen,
yes.
I am a connoisseur of film, and I love film, and I can be subjective. I can be a hardcore Marvel fan and still be a fan of DC, and still point out faults in Marvel, and still point out faults in DC and what I love. I can do all that.
Agreed.
I can do all that. But DC hurting right now. The best thing about DC to me, is their animated universe.
Agreed.
But we should get on. To Loki though.
We should get on to Loki. So if you have not seen Loki, because it is brand new, we will go ahead and put up the spoiler alert right now. Spoiler alert. So this is a brand new show. Obviously, it's a continuation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've had WandaVision, we've had Falcon the Winter Soldier, and now we're doing Loki. And what is most amazing about this show what's so most amazing about this show is that they gave us 2 shows that had a lot of personal and social tropes that needed to be covered in our modern era, but then they kind of saved this like let's go to the edge of the universe show for last because they think they knew this is what we needed to get us jazzed about the next stage of MCU movies. So I think it's a clever release strategy. One, I was smitten through the whole episode, and we'll go into some specifics, but I was excited the moment it started in New York. I was like, what? Okay, this is right. We're rolling. We're rolling right here. So how about you guys? Initial reactions?
I love the fact that everyone was getting excited because they saw like Robert Downey Jr. and Steve or Chris Evans and all of them in the credits leading up to the first episode. And really, it's just because that scene from Endgame shows up. But oh my goodness, that first, I mean, the whole I was like bracing myself because I wasn't ready for how it opened up to see what was going to happen. And they didn't waste time. They didn't waste time at all.
No. Lala, what do you got?
Initial reaction was, I'm ready. I like that they opened up with something that everybody's familiar with, that they gave you a little breath of fresh air, like because what they did was they gave you some stuff from Endgame. They also gave you some new stuff because Loki waving was never a part of what we saw in Endgame. So and the transition, I believe, like him turning into Cap in that moment, we didn't see that in Endgame either. So not that I can remember.
We
do.
It was there.
We do.
It was there.
Was it there? Okay,
that's how
well,
they justify the mask on him that we see from Avengers, which I thought was clever.
It was a different angle though, which was nice.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay. So maybe I blinked at that part because I'm gonna go back and watch the game. Thank you. So it was like they gave us a breath of fresh air. Like I just did a reaction to it. It should be up on my page before this Wednesday at Black Girl Marvel on YouTube. I did a reaction, and the first thing I said when it first started was, "Oh, okay, they taking this back to 2012. I like it. So
me as well.
That was pretty cool.
I love that they don't really spoon feed you everything, that you have to be lost with Loki through the whole episode, and you basically get to be like, wait, what is this? And what is this? And I love that Tara Strong is now in the Marvel Universe. And that is amazing to me because that means Harley Quinn has made her debut in the Marvel Universe, and she is the time clock in Loki.
Yeah, she's Miss Minutes, right?
Ms. Minutes,
yeah,
exactly.
I thought her voice sounded
I love it. So anyway, sorry, I adore her.
I have to say this real quick. Arlene Sorkin is my OG Harley Quinn. I'm going to say that she was the original voice for Harley Quinn. So that's all I have to say about that.
Tara Strong.
Tara, so I'm a mess with Tara. Like,
what? Tara Strong was the first voice for Harley Quinn. What are you talking about?
Arlene Sorkin was the inspiration and the the voice for Harley Quinn in the animated series where she first debuted.
Right. Okay. So that might have been the person that she was based on, but Tara Strong played her.
No.
I'm looking this up.
Everybody's saying no.
Arlene Sorkin was the voice of Harley Quinn up until after the first Arkham Asylum video game.
What are you talking about? Okay,
Arlene
we have to look this up.
Arlene, listen, I just looked it up. She inspired and voiced the DC Comics villain Harley Quinn in Batman the animated series and many animated series and video games that followed it. So she is, I believe Arlene Sorkin is the first. Because the Batman the animated series came out in 92.
Yep. And Harley Quinn did not exist until that series.
Yeah.
No, I know that. I knew that, but I swear it was Tara.
I believe I believe he's right. It's Arlene Sorkin.
What in the crap is wrong with my life? Okay, another one of those supposed glitches in the Matrix, if you will, because I could have swore a million times over that I'm still right. Anyway, I'm not.
No,
but we're gonna move on.
A family friend. I was a family friend with the Sorkins, so that's the one thing I might know.
Oh, well, that's dope.
Did you guys know that she's married to Christopher Lloyd?
No, that's also dope. Okay, moving on as I stick my foot really, really deep into my mouth and shut up and move on. Moving to Loki, I thought that Owen Wilson, who I'm never really a huge fan of, he's okay. He can be funny sometimes, but mostly just wow, you know.
Wow.
Exactly. He held his own with Tom Hiddleston so well, and I felt the sarcasm hit perfectly. I just kept going, oh, you could not dog on Loki any harder than you are right now. And then he does it further. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Listen, I'm a huge Owen Wilson fan. Okay. When the hair was long and shaggy and he was just people's choice, you know. But I think that Owen Wilson is one of those actors that people don't give a lot of credit to when it comes to performance wise, when it comes to hitting beats. To like I said this on my own review that I feel as though even though he's not a stand-up comedian, he moves like a stand-up comedian. Because he hits the beats. He knows when to sit back. He knows when to push forward. So like his brand of performing, his brand of acting works so well against Tom Hiddleston's Loki for me, because anything that Owen Wilson does is a very laid back type of chill. Like it's very rare that he's in a role where he's like blah, 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 blah. Like it's very like controlled anger or controlled like conversation, like him trying to talk to Loki and just be like, no, I just want to know, like, why do you feel like you need to kill people? Like, what's really there? Like, to like, it kind of like it draws you. And his acting for me it's like he's a god of mischief himself. Like he pulls you in, and then without you really realizing it. So, like, I love the juxtaposition in those characters. And Owen Wilson is just a great actor to me. He to me, he's not on the level of Michael Keaton because I'm obsessed with Michael Keaton, but he's one of those underrated actors like I think Michael Keaton is, and I think this show will put Owen Wilson in a better light for people to realize that like dude still got it.
I agree.
Dude can still act.
I agree.
I love how all of the agents within the TVA, with the exception of the one that he ends up like kind of sparring with, all of them and their lack of like reaction to Loki's words just sets him off. Like he doesn't know how to handle the fact that none of them are taking him seriously. And I love that. I mean, he's like, I'm gonna gut you like a fish, and he's like, what's a fish?
And then
like,
he gets that like, wrong later.
No, you need to explain a fish so that I know how to be upset.
But even when that guy's talking to the guys later, he's like, hey, he told me he was gonna hit me with a fish, not gut him. Like he totally gets it wrong because he's so not listening to him.
Like he's gonna turn me into a fish or something like that. He said. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, within the comic books, those clerks, those people within the TVA, with the exception of Mobius, they only exist when there's a variant in the timeline. So they snap into existence, and that's all they know. So that it makes perfect sense as to why he doesn't know what a fish is.
Right.
Well,
No, and
he
I love
kind
it.
of alludes to that a little bit without actually saying that. He was like, he was like, I was born here. That's all I know. Like they kind of allude to that, and I was like,
Yep.
interesting, because when he said that, it made me think that he's not really a person.
No, yeah, they're not
Really, when he
people.
said that,
No.
They
because
just look
you
like
don't
people for
know,
our sake and for
you don't
Loki's
know
sake.
exactly. And so I
And
was like,
Mobius is one of many of Mobiuses. Like they're all clones of themselves.
the MCU love cloning people, but you know that's a
Okay,
whole different
so
thing. Also,
on the note of Mobius.
um, oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, on the note of Mobius, since his first appearance was in a Fantastic Four comic book, and so was the TVA, that gets me really excited because this is their really big nod to both. And again, spoilers is obvious on the screen. To both Kang. And all of his Kronos goodness, as well as the Fantastic Four. This is the realm of Reed Richards in so many ways, and. Yep. This is where he decides to start meddling the most. And I want to see that Reed Richards. And I want to see it in such a way. This is totally an aside. I apologize. But because we've established Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, and these characters as extremely intelligent, when we see Reed Richards for the first time, all he has to do is laugh them off as stupid. And we don't need anything else. We'll know how intelligent he is. And that's what we need from Reed Richards. He needs to be the smartest person in the world, basically, with the exception, of course, his son. We'll get into that later.
I need him to be arrogant smart. I need him to be like, I don't want him to be arrogant smart. We've already seen that a couple times.
No. But he definitely needs to be like, he'll be just thinking about a problem, right, that he's trying to solve. And Sue will ask him something and he'll make a reference to Stark and Banner and how what they were doing was quaint and cute. Yeah. And not in a negative way, not in a snarky way, but just like, oh, yeah, I get what they were trying to do, but you're like,
he's unintentionally a jerk in some of his reactions.
Right.
Oh, but see, that's what I like about genius, right? And which is why sometimes I feel like people forget that genius people can be dicks sometimes,
right? Because
they're so laser focused on their problem or what they're trying to fix, or like, it's like the Sheldon Cooper thing, like, I'm so smart, I'm a bit of a dick, I get it, but I don't get it at the same time. Well, then you have to find an actor that can play that fine line where it's like, because you can't come into this world and disrespect Tony Stark. You just can't, because the whole MCU fan base will murder you and will not like this character, and that will influence the movie. Think about Captain Marvel, even though it made $1 billion, but it still influenced how people feel about this movie, how people feel about the actor, what they probably feel going forward for like Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel too. So you have to find an actor that can play that fine line of, that's his genius talking. Like, he's not really like that. It's just his genius talking.
Right. That's why you do it with his wife. If you do it with his wife, with his wife, he can be. We're all open with our wives in that way, or our husbands, or our significant others, where we're just like honest with them about how we feel about other people. And so, yeah, you're right. The MCU fans might take problem with it, but we'll still be able to know without any groundwork how smart he is, and I think that'll save a lot of time.
Because he doesn't even have to say words, so he could come up and they could be like, "Well, this is how Banner and Stark did it." He could just be like, "Okay."
Yeah, and then, here's how you really do it.
Right. And just keep going and keep doing it how he's doing it. I wouldn't mind something like that.
Anyway, I didn't. That totally became an aside, but I think it shows that we're all kind of excited for the prospect of the Fantastic Four being done right.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that we get to watch Loki change rapidly, like you were saying at the beginning of the show tonight, Lala, where because of the trials and tribulations he goes through with the TVA just to check in, he has to change who he is rapidly. They ask him, sign about everything you've ever said. And he's like, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. And of course, he learns to shut up very quickly. And then, of course, the robot scene, which we spoke about.
I love that scene.
And that guy he has so like, much disdain for him. He's like, could you just move along? I love that guy. Sorry. Yeah.
See, what I liked about this was, I like the fact that, because my whole thought process was this: what are you going to do with this Loki? Because this Loki is the villain Loki, right? Like this is the 2012 like Neo Loki,
right?
Right, and we left that Loki alone. And he has morphed into this brother of Thor, sacrificer for Asgard, against Thanos. Like, he made this transition. He grew up. He stopped like disappearing literally and decided to show up.
Right.
So I wanted to see what they were going to do. And they essentially brought him back, but just in a different way. Because by showing him his would-be past, like, and not so future, because he can't go back, they essentially pulled like a nebula and showed him what he could have been, what's capable within himself, right? So to watch him have to watch his mother die, and then to hear that news again was heartbreaking for me to watch.
And watching himself.
Because in the first film, in Thor 2, we saw him experience them saying, like, your mom died, right? We experienced that pain, that anguish. And then to have Owen Wilson blatantly tell him, yo, you got her killed. You did this because that's what you do. You kill people. Like, this was like his Rocket Raccoon moment for somebody to sit him down, look him in the face, and say, you were not born to be a king. You were born for death and destruction because that's all you do. And I think because Loki's been chasing power since he realized that he was a Laufey son. And I love that they call him Loki Laufey son and not Loki
Laufey son. I love it.
And I love that. And so he's been chasing power since he left. Since he let go of Thor's, let go of Odin's staff in Thor, he's been searching for power, which is how he probably got hooked up with Thanos. And to be in a place that he, one, doesn't understand, given how smart he is, that's a feat. And then two, for them to use Infinity Stones as paperweights in their drawers, just having them.
Just some of them, though.
To see the sheer power that's surrounding him and the fact that he's actually powerless, it made him take himself into account that I think we've never seen before. And I think, to me, that was the best part of the whole show for me, was to see that.
Nice.
To see that breakdown within the god of mischief.
Marvelite, let's hear it.
So it was very interesting when he goes through and he is jarred by their just being unimpressed with him. It sets him back. He doesn't realize, what he's at. And it's not until he ends up in the evidence room, basically, when he realizes that, this might be real power. And that's why they're not interested in him, really. And when he comes to terms, and I think it was very interesting. Like, when Frigga died, that was like the big turning point for Loki, and it led him down a different path.
Amen.
And I think he's never had the Loki that dies in Infinity War is a completely different Loki than the 2012 Loki, because he had all of that time to progress. This 2012 Loki has had to do all of that growing through the "This Is Your Life" scene. That he even goes deeper. That even his decision to send the Dark Elf after Thor ends up killing his mother, that was something that I don't even think Loki, like the Loki that we know, had to deal with. I think his mother died, and he didn't realize that he was directly involved in her death.
We didn't necessarily either. Not really.
No, well, it was.
You could have put it together, but they pointed it out.
You don't know specifically, yeah.
Right. And
so, like, it always struck me, like, he tells him to go down that specific stairs, and that's what leads to Frigga, and it's he's just broken by it. But if you watch his face, if you go back in the episode and watch his face when he finally goes back to the room and watches the rest of the reel, he goes through all of his emotions, and the greatest joy he gets is when he sees the interaction with his brother, that he's accepted and loved, even though all of the things that he's done. And the moment when Odin tells him that he loves him, that he's his son, that I think was something he needed to hear, just like he needed to hear in Ragnarok. But then when he sees his brother holding him as he's dead on the ground, that was something that I think spoke to him about the love of his brother. But at that moment, he realized there was nothing for him. in his future. His future was set to be one bad thing. Yes, he had all of this development, but he's gonna end up dead at the hands of Thanos, and he
Yeah.
knows Thanos because he failed in 2012,
Right.
which he was
Mhm.
warned. You fail, you're gonna feel pain, like you're gonna wish for death. And so, and I think when Mobius tells Loki, you are not you are not the hero, or you are not the main character, you are the one that makes others better. That is the worst thing to ever hear. You are put on this, you are put in existence just to help others meet their potential. And everything about this episode just kind of was like, I really felt bad for Loki at this point.
Right.
It's like it's a completely different like phase. I mean, you're coming to terms with everything at once.
So I'll take it that you guys are as excited as I am for the next episode. And of course, we will be reviewing that next episode next week, as well as 3 movies, which haven't been stated yet. I think we're going to talk about them just because we'll put them up on the Discord and in our promos this week. I did want to state.
Can I just let out a theory real quick?
Sure. And I'll wrap it up with 2 quick thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a theory real quick, because this is still Loki we're talking about, right? Besides all the tears he shed and the realization he's coming to, and I still think at the core, he's a good guy in a sense, but I still feel like he's a chess player at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like because he sees the power that the TVA has, I feel as though he thinks that that's the true power to have, and he's going to try to figure out a way to it himself. And if that means he has to play along and go and look for himself, which I'm curious to see how are there 2 Lokis.
Oh no, I can tell you right now. I hate to say it, but I think that it's easy. Kang has basically said, Loki, you're the god of mischief. Why don't you go make mischief in the timeline and get me what I need and bring it back? And then he'll of course become the big bad later.
Which Loki is this?
I think it's the female Loki.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Okay.
But it doesn't really matter which Loki it is.
Because they're saying, because it could be because it's a timeline, it could be a 1,000 different Lokis. Because I feel like I had a person ask a question like, well, why did they pick Loki as a variant and not somebody else? And I was like, well, maybe it's because they need Loki to stop Loki, because they need him to stop him.
Oh yeah, they did this movie.
Or a version of him.
They did this movie. It's called The One with Jet Li.
Yeah, I love that movie. I love that movie.
Same concept. So, please, and then we gotta wrap it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, and previews we see there's a scene where Loki is going to be sitting basically on stones talking to someone. Everyone assumed it was Black Widow. I believe it's the female version of himself. It's not a coincidence, and I don't think that they're pandering for anything for like the LGBT Pride Month. When if you look at the file that was that had Loki's information, when it says gender, it's fluid. Loki was very gender fluid in the comic books.
Right.
In fact, he liked to go back and forth between being, between different genders for the purpose of whatever he was wanting to do to cause mischief. And so I believe what's happening, we're going to find out the TVA are the villains. I don't know if they're going to do Kang yet or anything else. I think that the TVA are destroying alternate branches in the timeline. They are preventing there being a multiverse. And this evil Loki is trying to basically build those reset charges, which is basically just destroying universes. They're doing more than Thanos did. So they're destroying all of these alternate universes that have like a very variant timeline, and they're going to use it to try to stop the Timekeepers and the Time Variant Association. That's my theory.
I like it.
I agree.
So the 2 moments I would like to touch on, and then we gotta end the show. Nobody to raid tonight, so we'll skip off that part of it. So no big deal. But that is whatever. So going back to what Marvelite was saying with the specifics about when Mobius tells Loki that he's nobody special, that his existence is that to show other people what their true potential is. This is as close as you're going to get to telling a comic book character that they're a comic book character without them being Deadpool. And I thought that was really, really cool, because they pushed up against the 4th wall and stopped. And I don't think he's aware we exist, I don't believe that, but I do know that he knows there's a greater universe, which means that he might find us, but whether or not he'll ever interact with us is a whole nother thing. But I thought that was a
Right.
really, really cool way to do it. I switched from a red beanie to gray and dark black gray because it makes my skin and eyes look better and my lighting look better. So yeah,
Aww.
You got pretty
yeah.
eyes
Well, I
regardless.
appreciate that.
You
My
are
daughter,
because
my daughter
Black is
does too.
swimming. You want to swim his head down somewhere.
I appreciate that one. I like this one too. This is actually my Kermit the Frog one, but I like having logoless beanies, so the focus is right here. Uh, so last point, the moment in which they send him through the ticket line, right? And the guy's got to grab a ticket and refuses, and of course does what every customer. I think that was their way of talking about customer service, because the guy gets up at the front and goes, "The guy never gave me a ticket," and then poof, right? He's dead. The thing that I loved was, without saying a word, we understood that Loki understood where he was just by how he got into his pocket, right? And then reached for that. And then we go to the Loki credits, which I thought was one of the greatest ends to a cold open for a TV show I've seen in a really long time. So that's my final thought. 10 out of 10 for a first episode, which is not normally something I would rate. I'm normally like a 4 on most first episodes. Oh yeah, no. There are going to be 5 more nights for Loki. This was just for the first episode, just so we're clear.
Yep. I have to say, Disney Plus is knocking out of the ballpark. I feel like the way that they're expanding this universe is I've always said it this way. It's like I've always felt like the Avengers movies are the big event comic books, are the annuals, and then you've got all of the the side issues where all of the individual movies,
Right.
and then you've got now these Disney Pluses, which are kind of like the supplementals in a sense,
Right.
where you're really getting like a focused story about the character. It's like those limited runs when you get like the Bendis run, or the different authors that do like their specific speciality on the character.
Right.
And it feels more comic book, and I think Disney Plus has given Marvel Studios the ability to do in media form with audio and visual what they could not have done in the movies beforehand. And I think this is where Marvel's excelling. And they've knocked out of the ballpark with WandaVision. And I think that it was smart for them with WandaVision to do 2 episodes at first. Captain America, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, was obvious a good step. They only had to do 1 episode, and this one just feeds to the fire so much. And I mean, the mention of Nexus, the Nexus with WandaVision. Then you have the whole Nexus issue in Loki. This is all leading into the Multiverse of Madness, No Way Home, and all of this
Fantastic
stuff.
Four.
I cannot wait.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Jesse, yeah, we will be reviewing Loki again next week, 2nd episode. So please do catch up and watch with us so we can talk about it. So if you do not already follow my awesome co-hosts, please do follow both Black Girl Marvel on TikTok, YouTube, all social media across the board, as well as Marvelite20, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. I think we're all on Instagram. I'm on Instagram.
Yes, I'm on Instagram.
Yeah, don't forget to follow me. I would hope you guys do. If you don't, please do follow Mr. Snippets. And there's my shameless plugs for us this evening. We will. Nice, I like that. That's beautiful. I will be getting some more things going on this show. We've been talking about some things, and my schedule might change. So Marvelite and I might be able to start doing like a 1-hour lead up comic review or something to the show. We're going to talk about that. So, and then of course, Lala, if she can, is of course welcome. But I know that time is limited because of work. But we will discuss this off camera. You guys all have a fantastic evening. You guys have any final words?
No,
well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thanks to Psycho and Jesse for the subs. You guys are awesome. If you haven't followed me on Twitch, please follow me. Need a friend, or possibly going to do something, and hopefully I can get this Twitch thing down and give you guys some more content, and then be even better when me, Snitty, and Mark get back together. So yeah,
I love it.
I want to say this. This is. I didn't talk to Lala before this, but if you guys do not follow Black Girl Marvel on TikTok, you really need to. We have a simple
Please.
goal. We need to get her to 1,000 to start. And that is so that she can do lives. Then we can kind of do these lives on TikTok as well.
Mhm.
Me and Snippets have already done some, or done one. But really, like, if you can show her the love there, that's, it would be fantastic. It's all about
Yeah.
us
Share
supporting
my
each
stuff
other.
around. Tell
Yes,
people to follow me and stuff.
Agreed,
absolutely.
100%. Well said, both of you. And I think
Thanks,
between the three of us,
Marmalade. You rock, man.
No
we
problem.
always cover everything. Please do follow us all, and we will, of course.
Thanks for the follow, Matthew.
Oh, look
You
at
just
that!
told me.
She got a follow. Look at that. Step in the right direction. All right, guys. You guys have a fantastic evening. Good night
Good
from
night, guys.
Real Triad Reviews.